that Feldenkrais does in the Toronto workshop. Again, there's huge gaps in it. I've had great fun in going back and trying to put things in. But all of the bits that I'll give you is just begin to notice how he directs attention, what he's directing attention to. So even though this is me teaching it, and I've got my ways of directing attention, I've tried to sort of keep some of the things that he's putting together. Because we are interested in this segment about learning, and the biggest thing we're doing to facilitate learning is how do we use our attention. There's no bigger one. That's what we're doing. Nudging people's learning by directing their attention. So we're nudging people's learning by directing their attention. Yeah. So, and again, you will notice in these, some of the ATMs that I'm teaching, even the one I did yesterday, I just wanted to make this clarification for you. It really depends on the group that you're teaching to, obviously, how you're going to teach. So this is a group in Toronto. I don't know how much experience they'd had or not had. But that's what you're learning when you start to deal with groups. Is it, if I ask too many questions, am I getting in the way of their experience? So I'm also in these particular lessons probably asking you questions that I wouldn't ask the general public to direct your attention further to the things you could understand that might be really helpful in your learning. No? So they're the judgments we're making as we're working with someone. Am I getting too much in the way of their experience? Am I facilitating their experience? Maybe it's enough that I'm just really clear about what I'm asking them to do. That's enough for them. Do this, do this, do this. And then it's just in the rests I get them to spread their attention a little bit more. So that's just a little lead in. So lying on your back, it'll be on the synopsis. Yeah, it's just called rolling with the arms, I think. I don't even know that he puts titles on these. And I haven't got the notes here with me, so the actual transcript notes. So let's do what I've realised is quite important in ATM. As you're lying there, what do you recall of yesterday's ATM? So we was looking at 3 different ideas. So at the end of the lesson yesterday, what do you recall of your contact with the ground? And how would you compare that with how you are this morning? And in recalling it, is there a possibility that maybe your system could settle a little bit by really recalling and remembering yesterday? That something could settle a little bit more into your contact with the ground. So this getting people to compare and contrast, not just in an ATM, but from one experience at one time to an experience at another time. A little bit what we talked about yesterday. How do I use my learning from previous experiences to enhance my future learning? What was it that you remember from yesterday about your sense of length and width? Can you remember where your arms and legs, what was the shape you were making by the end of the ATM yesterday? The one that we were doing on rolling to one side and the other. And how was your breathing? So is there something about bringing you back to those sensations from yesterday that allows your system to enter or to remember more easily the learning state that you were in? So as you're lying there with your arrangement of your arms and legs, just begin to roll your pelvis and your legs, if they come along for the ride a bit, a little left and right. And thinking about what we were talking about at the end of the day yesterday, how do you use where the weight already is on the ground? And how do you find a way to move using where you already know about the ground? And again, explore the distance that you'd like your legs to do that. So these lessons, these two that we're doing, are about rolling. So what happens when we roll when our legs are really and arms are really close to us? How does that give us a sense of width to roll? And what is it about if our arms and legs are more spread? How does that influence our ability to find this width to roll toward? And then could you do the same with your shoulders? So you're just rolling a little bit across your shoulders. So you've found a distance for your legs that feels it most enhances your ability to roll a little. So again, you're going to find where the weight is in your torso. So for some of you, that might be right down, maybe in your mid-chest area. For some of you, it might be in your upper chest area, depending on the shape you're making on the floor. You're noticing where the weight is and feeling how where the weight is going to determine where your shoulders go, the angle that you're going to move your shoulders. And then again, explore the position of your arms. How does the width of your arms influence your ability to roll your shoulders? So you're really involved in an investigation. And can you see that's really different than just me simply saying roll your shoulders left and right and see how it feels? If I give you a little bit more idea of some of the things you might be looking for and exploring. Go gently, really feel that you're initiating from your shoulders. Does your head get involved in that movement? Remember yesterday we were really looking at how all of you could be responsive to the movement in any part of you. And again, it's not about making the movement happen. It's about asking the question of, is something ready to move or not? And then your last one is rolling your head a little left and right. And now you could see, does anything happen in my shoulders? So now you've got 3 areas of contact. You've got the back of your head, you've got your somewhere in your upper back, which are connected to your shoulders, and you've got somewhere in your pelvis, which is connected to your legs. And you're just seeing, how is there any relationship between these parts of myself? So you're never pushing the ground. You're not pushing with your hands, you're not pushing with your feet. Or you can, but you know that you're doing it. And pause, have a rest. And just see, how is that influenced? What's your sense about yourself? And then listen to the instruction first, because you're going to be interested in the how of what you're doing here. You're going to bring both arms up to be out at a 90-degree angle to your shoulder. So they'll be on a straight line, both of them. How do you do that? How much of yourself do you include in the image of that movement? So go slow. Is your pelvis interested in how you bring your arms out to the side? Is your neck interested? Your head? So just really feeling, how do we begin to build up this picture of asking people to spread their attention, of asking people to sense that they can include more and more of themselves in the image of an action. Okay. And you might want to take one arm up first, or the other one up. So you might want to experiment with one at a time. Does one arm feel more connected to the rest of me than the other? And then bring your arms down again to your resting position. And this time you're going to bring both legs to a standing position. So again, maybe you might want to choose to do one at a time, to go slow, or you might want to do two, but you're really asking this question of, how do I do this? So it's not just the quality that we're looking for. Yes, we're always looking for reversibility and that your breathing's easy and there's less effort. But our focus more in this lesson is, how much of me do I allow to be involved? Even if it's only tiny, tiny movement, but that there's an image of myself doing this action that is all of me. What I find really fascinating about teaching this lesson, when these two lessons, especially when right from the beginning you're really asking people to sense more of themselves, to spread their attention in this way, that the state that people enter into very quickly is that where they can learn is it's a really nice way to get them very quickly into this more global appreciation of themselves. So then once you've got your legs standing, how's that influenced where your contact with the ground, your sense of length and width? And now with your legs bent like this, could you again begin to take your one or two arms together out to that position? And you're exploring, how's it different when my legs are bent? Is there something about when I'm a little bit more unstable because my legs are bent? There's a little bit more movability in me that for some of us allows more of us to be ready to move. So lots of things to explore. That's what you're investigating. Huh? They're the relationships you're investigating for yourself. How is it that maybe greater contact with the ground in my middle lets something be more available to move? Because these are the principles that we need to understand about movement. Okay, so you're going to end up with your both legs bent, both arms out to the side. Now, most of the people who aren't in the middle have got plenty of room. If those of you who are in the middle, because we're going to start moving your arms a little bit here, if you feel that you're going to sort of get in each other's way, just top and tail. And top and tail rather than moving up and down. Huh? Great. So you know you're going to have room to move your arms around. Great. So you've got both arms out in a straight line at shoulder height. Both knees are bent. Notice where your palms are facing. Are they facing up? Are they facing down? Maybe one's a little bit more up and one's a little bit more down. So just attending to how your two arms are lying. And then slowly paying attention to what you're doing, how much of you is involved, could you begin to turn one arm up and one arm down? Whichever, it doesn't matter which one you do, but as one palm turns down, one palm turns up. So they're both moving at the same time. And you're finding this ability. And what's your image of that? Is it just your palm doing that? Where do you begin this movement from? of turning one palm up and one palm down. So just for a moment, come back to your beginning movement and do it where you're only thinking of your palm and your lower arm. And just that you can do this movement purely from your hand and your lower arm. And then begin to expand that to include your upper arm, your collarbone, your shoulder blades, your collarbone going into your sternum, into your ribs, which is going to go through to your spine. So we can do this as a skeletal idea. Or you can still think bigger, just that my arms connect to my chest, connect to my head, through my torso, to my pelvis. But really feel that you're initiating from here, not here. No? So you're not asking your pelvis to drive the movement. The pelvis is responding to the movement. So you can begin to feel how quickly your pelvis wants to do all the movement. Yeah? So you want to slow the sequence down the other way. Does your head follow this in any way? How does it go through to your pelvis and legs? So how ready are your legs to respond to this? And has it got something to do with this idea of width? So again, I'd really suggest for some of you that you don't feel the connection through to your pelvis and legs. Get your feet wider. Get your legs wider. Give yourself a really big, wide base of support. Give yourself the width that maybe you don't normally give yourself, because so often we're standing, we're in this upright vertical place. So it's this idea, if you like, of initiation, which I know you did in Spiffer last segment. So what happens if all of you is ready? All of you is ready to go from the beginning of the movement. So it's not one part pulling another, pulling another, pulling another. But what happens in our sense of self when we start to get this idea that I'm rolling my hands, palm up, palm down, and all of me is in my image of the movement from the beginning? This ability to encompass this global picture of ourselves. The front, the back, the sides, all in our image. And pause. So as I said, I find it really fascinating. The big picture ideas he's getting right from the beginning of this workshop. The understandings he's giving people. So that they're not just, we'll talk about this more, they're not just gathering information, but they're processing information. Okay, back to the same position. Legs bent, arms out to the side. And begin to do that with your right arm only. So just your right arm is going to do this turning, this twisting. What happens in your shoulder? So we're just going to put a little bit more detail into how your right arm is connecting through to you. And does that mean that your left arm does nothing? Because if your right arm is going to move, it doesn't mean that your left arm has to do as big a movement, but that it's still ready to respond to this movement of your left arm. And does your right arm going up and down, do you feel more of a relationship to one hip, one leg than the other? Does it influence if you're doing one arm only what your head does? Really feeling one shoulder is going, your shoulder has to lift forward and back to do this movement of rotating your arm. So can you feel that your right shoulder has to lift forward away from the floor to help this turning of your arm? And then it goes back down as you turn the other way. And then do the other arm, your left arm, and see how do you do this. This turning of your whole arm, or the turning of yourself, if you like. That you can really begin to feel this connection through your middle. Because as soon as you include more of yourself in your image, the middle will be interested. Your middle will be interested. It has to be. Good. Okay. So now, with your right arm, you're going to begin to slide your right arm, keeping it in contact with the floor and noticing that as it slides, you might want to turn the palm up or palm down, whatever happens, and you're going to begin to slide it up on the floor in the direction above your head. So your right arm is going to slide on the floor, and how much of yourself do you allow to follow that movement? Are you thinking of both shoulders? Your right arm is sliding up on the floor. Where does your head go? Is your head interested in this? And again, you're as much as possible getting a sense that all of you is connected to this movement. So your weight is transferring. Your pelvis understands what you're doing. And what would your left arm do to make this easier? Where would your left arm go to allow your right arm to reach up higher? Where would it go? So for many of you, it's sitting there like a bit of a piece of wood. So I know that you're not including more of yourself in your image. So your right arm's leading this movement of going, sliding on the floor up. So where would your left arm go? Can you feel it would begin to slide down a little bit? That if you really allow the movement to flow through you, because this is what we do with our attention. We get stuck on the bit that we're moving. We lose this, for many of us, this big picture. And attending is always about the movement of attention. What do you mean you're supposed to be leaving your anti-gravity muscles alone? What does that mean? I think your thinking's getting in the way of your sensing. So give that up. Give that up, even thinking about it, and feel, sense. Sense, let your eyes soften, you can drop effort. Forget about the anti-gravity muscles. They're not going to be useful. That is not going to be useful for you here. Huh? Just think, I'm rolling my weight. I'm rolling. What am I doing to help my arm? And you can feel that your arm is heavy on the ground, isn't it? It's sort of jerking. Yeah? So where's your weight here? Where's your weight here? Where is it? So let it roll. Let this roll. No, not your head. Let this roll. There. And look how light your arm gets. Yeah? There you go. Feel the difference. So and it's a really valuable thing. This is when our thinking gets in the way. That we've got an idea about something that's taking us out of our sensation. So all you're feeling here is, how do I let more of myself be involved? How do I let the weight shift across the ground? So where do your knees go? Where does your pelvis go? Your knees are bent. Your knees are bent to start with. So could you find a way of reaching your right arm up where your right side could get longer? Your left side could get shorter, and your knees could roll to your right. So as you sweep your right arm up from out at that angle, could you find a way? So you've all been exploring lots of different ways. So now I'm constraining you a little bit more. Yeah? That as your right arm sweeps up along the floor, I'm suggesting a particular trajectory. You can feel your weight rolling to the right, your knees going to the right, your left arm sliding down on the floor. Your head is probably going to move backwards in space a little bit. So this is, again, something we'll often do in ATM. We set up the big picture. We set up that you're exploring. How do you do this? And then we come back and refine it. And we come back and give you a particular configuration that we're interested in. So you're only going to the right here, just to the right and back to the middle. And each time you do it, again, another big part of our work, you never are doing it as an exercise where you just keep doing the same thing. So each time you do it, you're spreading your attention to something else. And in this particular lesson, you could spread your attention to, what's my left foot doing? What's my right foot doing? My left hand, my right hand, my neck, my ribs. So that I'm constantly moving my attention to include another part. So this idea of inclusive attention that Feldenkrais had, which is so powerful, is that our attention never gets fixated. And nothing is more important than anything else. Nothing is more important than anything else. Which is very much what peripheral vision is about. We're just continually moving our attention. And what happens to our organisation when we start to get this sense of attending? So is there a point in this trajectory, let's add another little bit in, that as your right arm is sweeping up to the right and your legs tilting across to the right, your weight shifting, your head is turning backwards a little bit to maybe look towards your hand, that your right leg could begin to get longer. Begin to get longer. That your right leg, and again, feel your way. Is there a point somewhere there that something's getting longer on my right side that's going to allow my right leg just to slide long? And it slides long and down, so that you're going to end up with one long line from your right hand down your right side to your right foot. And if you go gently and keep feeling your way, that your head would get light at a certain point to allow it to lift, to be on top of your right arm, looking up at your hand. So that you're going to get really long on one side and your head is going to come across. Onto your right arm, so your right arm is sweeping, your head's also moving forward. So even though your head's going back a little bit in space, your chest is carrying it forward. So that your right ear comes to rest on your right upper arm. Your head's back a little bit, looking towards your right hand. So there's the big picture now that we're heading toward. And again, you're playing with that. I'm getting a sense of how this all emerges, how all of this comes out of including all of me in my image, my belly, my back, my sides, so that at no point until you can reach a point where it doesn't feel like you're making anything happen. It's coming out of the sensing. This ability to keep shifting your weight, shifting your weight, shifting your weight. So you're not rolling to your tummy or your thing, you're ending up on your side with your right arm and leg long, your left leg bent. Your left arm might be behind you still, hanging a little bit behind you on the ground, and you're really, really long on your right side, and you're more shortened on your left side. So your right leg, how do you find, what do you have to find in both hips, in your low back, in your belly, that lets your right leg just get long? And it's about the parts of yourself on your right side that you can allow to come to the ground. There's a big relationship here between the parts of yourself on your right side that you can allow to find the ground, and roll to your back and rest. And get a sense of how these movements have influenced your contact with the ground, your sense of length and width on your left and right sides, and your breathing. Is there somewhere where you feel you've found a little bit more space by doing these movements of finding how you can fully roll and lengthen on one side? So in this particular lesson, Feldenkrais does this really lovely analogy. He uses it a lot in different parts of lessons, different writings that he's got, which I think is a really powerful analogy for this idea of how we attend and what we find from attending. So how do we begin to bring something more foreground in our attention and still have the background at the same time? And that we keep moving our attention. So he uses the analogy of learning how to read. So that first thing, that when we're looking at a book, it really doesn't have any meaning. So how do we get meaning out of words? How do we get meaning from these pages of squiggles on a paper? So he would say it's by moving our attention, being able to make distinctions. So that again, we have to find a way to make distinctions where we learn to recognize something. We learn to recognize the shape of a letter that it's making. so that we can start to pick out a letter. And then from being able to make a distinction about that these shapes are different, that we begin to pick out words. And as soon as we get to words, something has more meaning. Because as soon as we have a word, we're naming something. So now we're scanning in a different way. We're looking for different relationships than we first did, where we were simply looking to, what do all these bits mean? And then from words, we begin to see sentences, we see lines, we see sentences. So all of a sudden our comprehension of what these words mean in a particular context, we see that the word has a meaning and that's changing on its context. So our understanding keeps growing and our comprehension keeps growing. And then we get to the point that we could begin to tell someone else. So we've read this, we've managed to put all these letters into words, know how we then follow a line, we keep moving our attention. So you can't read if you let your attention fixate. But initially, we may need to pick out a detail. So this movement of attention constantly and building a richer understanding, a richer comprehension, and then being able to relate it to someone. That's what you're doing as ATM teachers. You're making all these distinctions on yourself. You're feeling how, yes, I know I've got a foot and a knee and a neck and eyes, fingers, and we're starting to join them all together. So that first of all, and with many of our clients, it's like hip has no meaning. But we're gradually building all that together to make meaning for the person. Showing them there's different ways they can construct these parts of themselves into different sentences, and that influences how they move, how they are in the world, what they can do. But it's all dependent on this movement of attention. So bend your knees again. Bring your arms out to that position. So we've been doing a lot on including more and more of yourself in your image of this movement. So now, as you continue with this same movement just to the right, of sweeping your right arm up in this particular way, could you now really pay attention to the aesthetic of the movement? So can you really feel that when it's easy, it's pleasurable, it has that internal aesthetic feeling? So just to stay in that range where you have that and then go back again. And feel that there's something about how if I can stay in pleasure, if I can stay in ease, that more of me is involved in the movement. And that if I go beyond, and feel free to explore this, go beyond that feeling of where it feels pleasurable or aesthetic, and notice which parts of you have fallen out of your image, which parts have stopped moving. So this profound understanding that he had, that the more of myself is in my image, the more choices I have, because I've got more vocabulary, if you like. I've got more possibilities. So you're just staying within that really aesthetic appreciation. Come back to the middle, arms long, legs long. And what's your aesthetic appreciation of yourself at the moment? Gently roll your head left and right. And see, is there a difference between maybe the trajectory you go to the right, to the trajectory you go to the left? How much of you is involved in your image of the movement? And can you begin to sense that the side that your head will roll most easily, that there's a relationship between your ability to roll your head easily and the contact you make with the ground? The ability to shift your weight a little across the ground. And if you don't get a sense of that relationship, if that's like, no, I'm not sure I can feel that, just arch your low back a little bit off the ground and feel, how does that influence your ability to roll your head? And then allow it to go back down to where it is at the end of the lesson. And feel that really that relationship between my ease of moving, of rolling. And then when you're ready, begin to roll to whichever side you prefer. Go at a speed where you can keep some of these ideas of how much can I include in my image of myself as I roll to the side, to come to sitting and standing. How much. And, you might even notice if there's a point where it just gets a little bit more difficult, what parts stopped moving? And how do you find yourself in standing, those of you who are already up? Does your weight feel more over one leg than the other? And which side does it feel more on? If you were going to turn, which leg would you go to turn over? Would you get a little longer on the turning side? So what is it from that lesson that we've just been doing about everything getting longer on one side? Everything being ready to turn one way. And was there something about where your head went as we did that? Were you more looking up a little bit to get this feeling of really getting longer on one side? Have a walk. And how much of yourself do you feel in your image at the moment? From the moment you started to shift your weight, how much of you was in your image? Where do you want to look after a lesson like this? Is this a lesson that asks you to look down? Or is it much more about being up a little bit more on the horizon or looking up a little? What are we evoking here? This idea of rolling, getting along on one side, all of us being involved in the movement. Okay, let's take our break. We'll do an early break this morning.